Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days, or today's video, which takes us to the beginning of March, actually. We'll be going to the first day of March, which is day 10, and we'll be able to extend out beyond that the extended GFS and ECM ensembles. They run to around a couple of weeks. And I've got Beijing Climate Centre at the end of the video for the next 40 days. So the shorter range interest is going to be next week, with the jet stream moving southwards, taking areas of low pressure southwards with it. There is perhaps an increasing potential for some wintry weather in the second half of next week. So it's been a winter pretty much devoid of snow across much of lowland southern England, and even with this pattern that we've got coming up next week, it may be a struggle to get snow down to low levels across southern England. But I think there may be an increasingly wintry flavour to the weather next week, particularly in the north and over high ground, but not necessarily exclusively so. So more about that in a moment. Of course, the longer range interest into March is whether we break out of this very unsettled weather pattern, start to get some higher pressure building up. There's been a few hints of that in the model output recently. And we'll have a look and see whether those hints remain within the model output in a moment, in the second half of the video. So just to say that if you're enjoying the content on the channel at the moment, please can you like the videos and let us know that you enjoy them. Also let YouTube know that you enjoy what we're doing. Subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. We're trying to get our subs up. And also, if you would like to, you can give us a donation through PayPal or Patreon. Big thank you to all of our patrons and donors as well. Thank you so much, everybody, for doing that. If you have been enjoying the content, then please can you consider becoming a patron or a donor. Links in the description at YouTube and, of course, on all the pages at gavsweathervids.com. Right, we're going to begin, though, by having a look at the Arctic and North Atlantic Oscillation observed and forecast charts. So the black line shows where we've been with the Arctic oscillations. The red line's at the end where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the Arctic oscillation to go. So it's just an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state. It's not driving anything in its own terms. It just tells us what the atmosphere is doing. When the AO is in its positive phase, then we've got low pressure sort of entrenched and ingrained in the Arctic and over the North Pole. We've got a very intense stratospheric polar vortex. However, when the Arctic oscillation is in its negative phase, then you'll have high pressure blocking up over the pole. Of course, blocking is a route to get contact out of the pole and down into the mid-latitudes. So we begin here with a very positive AO, of course. The AO went positive right at the beginning of winter, and except for a brief period in the second half of December, has generally stayed in positive territory through beginning to end. We have had exceptionally positive Arctic oscillations through January and February. The first peak happens there around the middle part of January. At that point, we thought the AO couldn't go. We thought it couldn't go any more positive, but in fact, it did manage to go more positive in the second week of February. That's where we are right now, exceptionally positive with the Arctic oscillation, and the GFS ensembles are showing in a few days' time the Arctic oscillation will go into record-breakingly positive territory again. It will be even more positive than it's been throughout this winter so far. So right at the very end of the winter is probably when we're going to get the most positive Arctic oscillation of all. After that, we see, as we have been doing with these peaks in the AO, you see the way the AO spikes up and then drops. And again, we see in the GFS ensembles, it spikes up and then drops. So we can't maintain that level of positivity, you know, indefinitely. So the AO does drop then as we move towards March, but still stays in negative territory, in positive territory, I should say, even into March. We still keep the AO trending positive, which means that the intense polar vortex continues, the low pressure continues over Greenland and over the Arctic and over North Pole. We continue to drive in the westerlies as well. There's no sign of a negative AO before the beginning of March and even into the start of March. There's that one little outlier member just there. But other than that, the AO staying positive through to the beginning of March if the GFS ensembles are right. At the same time, the NEO has also been in its positive phase as well. Nowhere near as positive as the AO has been, but nevertheless, it has been a positive NEO winter as well. So again, same idea of this. The black line shows where we've been with the North Atlantic Oscillation. The red lines at the end, where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the North Atlantic Oscillation to go. Once again, just an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state, this time looking at the North Atlantic as opposed to the Arctic. It's measuring the air pressure between Iceland and the Azores. When the NEO is positive, you've got low pressure on Iceland, high pressure through the Azores, strengthening the westerly zonal flow, particularly if it's combined with a positive AO, as has been through this winter. Conversely, though, when the NEO is negative, you have high pressure towards Iceland, low pressure towards the Azores. So pretty much throughout winter, the NEO has been in its positive phase. Again, just as with the AO, the NEO went positive around the beginning of December and has generally stayed there throughout the winter. Occasionally, we've gone down to neutral, and just around the end of January, we went down to very weakly negative, but then the NEO took off again. That's where we are right now. To the second half of February, we are solidly positive with the NEO. GFS ensembles are forecasting the NEO to stay positive through the next week, but as we look towards the end of February and the beginning of March, we possibly see signs of the NEO reducing down towards neutral. Not particularly negative, but it does look like a reduction in the positivity of the NEO could be on the way towards neutral type territory. That would suggest maybe a bit of a weakening of the Azores high. So with the AO staying very positive, nowhere near as positive as it will be in a few days, but still going to stay solidly positive, the NEO reducing down towards neutral around the end of February into the beginning of March. This possibly tells us that we will continue to drive in a zonal flow, but maybe a rather colder variety of zonality. So maybe weakening the Azores high a little bit and pushing it out in towards the middle of the Atlantic, possibly allowing the jet stream to shift a bit further southwards. And that's how we may get something a little bit colder and maybe a little bit more wintry, especially in the north, through the second half of next week as we run up towards the end of February. We see this on the 500 millibar high tsunami flowcharts from the Penn State University for the next 7 to 10 days. So we've got the ECMWF here on the top, and the GFS, which we'll have a look at in a moment, is on the bottom. So 500 millibars is an area in the absolute high pressure and low pressure being moved around by a jet stream. Red extrapolates high pressure blue to low pressure. You can see that broadly we're keeping the pattern of the winter, really. So we're keeping a deep area of low pressure in the North Atlantic and over into northern parts of Europe as well. There is a bit of a change, one for Eastern America. There's a trough digging down across eastern parts of America, which if it comes off would turn them quite a lot colder. And the ridge, which has been solidly through this winter centred over Spain, looks like it's pulling out into the middle of the Atlantic. So the central part of the Atlantic sees this ridge of high pressure, or the centre of the ridge of high pressure, is through the central part of the Atlantic. What that does, although the ridge is still sort of ridging into southern and southwestern parts of Spain, just allows a jet stream to start to move southwards. So it's a very subtle difference, but it's quite an important difference to the feel of the weather, as we would start to pull in quite cold air from Greenland and maybe even a little bit further north if that came off. We would start to entrench colder air into the trough of low pressure as the jet stream is shifting southwards. I think that does take us onto the cold side of the jet stream, actually, across the northern and western parts of Europe with the ECM. The GFS is very similar. So again, we see that the ridge centres in the middle of the Atlantic as opposed to being centred over Spain. There is still a ridge from that main area of high pressure that pushes down towards Spain, but everything looks like it's pulling out into the middle of the Atlantic. The height's pulling out into the middle of the Atlantic. Trough of low pressure in over Eastern America, which is quite a change for them as well. Jet stream doing something a bit like that, and again it just places us onto the cold side of the jet. With that sort of mid-Atlantic ridge, we would start to allow colder air to move in from the north and from the northwest in the 7 to 10 day time frame, which is taking us to the end of February and just into the start of March. So the evidence perhaps stacking up for something a little bit colder as we come towards the end of February and just going to the beginning of March. I don't want to go too over the top with this, though, because, I mean, it's not a beach for the east. It's not sort of Siberian or true Arctic northerly winds. But then, to get wintry weather, it doesn't necessarily have to be that severely cold. You can get wintry weather, particularly for northern areas, just from a pattern like this, where the jet stream starts to shift southwards. It doesn't take much of this to go wrong, though, for us to stay mild. We've got to pull the heights away from Spain and into the middle of the Atlantic. If those heights in the end stay rooted over Spain, then the wind will stay sort of west-southwesterly. These are the GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. We're going to Aberdeen today at Old Wet Central. So the red line is 30-year upper air temperature average for Aberdeen. We've got some very mild air coming up in the next day or two, and then over the weekend the temperature drops, and after that it looks like the temperature stays quite cool really at Aberdeen through to the end of February and the beginning of March, generally trending a little bit below average, and possibly even further into the first week of March. There's no sign of anything notably mild there for Aberdeen. At the same time, unsettled too. So we've got a deluge today, and maybe some wintry showers following that wet weather. Then a couple of drier days, but over the weekend into next week, looks solidly unsettled. Really regular precipitation spikes coming through, plenty of rain. Of course, with temperatures generally trending a bit colder than average, there is a bit of wintry potential there, perhaps, for Aberdeen. If we look at Manchester, we see a similar story, really. So again, the red line is 30-year upper air temperature average for Manchester. We've got a push of very mild weather coming up in the next couple of days, and then perhaps into weekend as well, quite mild Manchester. But next week, it looks like temperatures go cooler, go down a little bit below average, and still with lots of precipitation spikes coming through as well. So there will be plenty of precipitation around as well, and with temperatures going below average next week, maybe a little bit of wintry potential in there as well. Temperature anomalies from the 20th to 28th of February, going colder than average for Scotland. We haven't said that very often this winter, but below average temperature anomalies for Scotland, a little bit above average for England and Wales. These anomaly maps may trend slightly colder in the next couple of days. We'll keep a close eye on them. Precipitation anomalies from the 20th to 28th of February, above average for the north, near normal for the south-southeast. It remains quite an unsettled week to come. That's how the GFS is looking for Sunday then. So on Sunday we've got wet weather through the country. That will clear eastwards and turn us cooler and fresher. And then a deep area of low pressure comes in off the Atlantic on Monday. That could bring severe gale force winds to northern and western parts of the country. That low pressure zips across Scotland and out into the Norwegian Sea on Tuesday and leaves us in a cold and showery west to northwesterly wind. And then you see by middle of next week what's happening. Notice how the ridge is pulling out of Spain to some degree and centering sort of here. And then we've got this low pressure up to our northwest. And we send the jet stream and the wind direction on a northwest-southeast trajectory. The black line is the jet stream, so we're on the cold side of the jet at this point through the middle of next week. And then bring further areas of low pressure into what is an already established quite cold air mass. So there's more low pressure lurking around here. There's at least a couple of areas of low pressure, maybe 3 of them, lurking around there. And we've already got cold air established from the northwest. Although you notice this high pressure is creeping back towards Spain again. We do need to get high pressure out of Spain to really start to pull in some colder winds. But anyway, the upper air temperatures look quite cold by Thursday next week. And then these areas of low pressure start to come in to that cold air. Of course, the exact track of those low pressures are going to be quite critical. So there's an area of low pressure just here that might bring something a little bit wintry to more southern areas, but of course it could slip into France. And then there's more low pressure just there and just there. All coming into relatively cold air as well. There's the upper air temperatures, do look quite cool really, and quite a deep weather system pushing in on Friday. That's got quite a big warm sector associated with where we've got this yellow area. But of course, there's time for that to change and be shunted southwards. Then back into those cold northwesterlies again as the low pressure moves away to eastern parts of Scotland. I think that would deliver a snow event to northern England, Scotland. Whether we will get any snow from that down across southern parts of the country is very difficult to achieve, with high pressure still stuck there around Spain, really. And then moving beyond day 10, we remain in these west to northwest winds, still looking unsettled and showery, quite cool as well. Further low pressure rattling in as we go into the to the end of the first week of March. That's when we're looking to get to 7th of March. Still very unsettled, still low pressure sweeping in. So the GFS is still not really seeing any change to high pressure, I have to say. Certainly within the first week of March, it's still keeping things unsettled. And the deluge just goes on. This is the GEM, so again on Sunday we've got a band of rain through the central swathe of the country. That will clear out of the way and leave us with a cooler, fresher day. Then on Monday through to Tuesday, a deep area of low pressure heading in towards the north of Scotland. That could bring severe gales to Scotland and maybe another bout of wet and windy weather as well. As that low pressure moves towards Norway, then we start to dig in these colder winds from the northwest again. That's how we look as we get through to Thursday. So we've got quite cold air established on Thursday. Low pressure is downstream in the Atlantic as well, moving into that cold air. We've already established a cold northwesterly ahead of that low. And the exact track of the low pressure is critical as to where any rain-snow divide is. That's how we look with the GEM at the end of next week, Friday, 28th of February. The low pressure then is moving into the southern North Sea, pulling in again quite a cold northerly wind as that low pressure exits away. On the northern side of that low, definitely think there's a potential for a snow event, which would be primarily Scotland and northern England. If the low pressure's further south though, that could bring the snow risk a little bit further southwards too. And then up to day 10, which is certainly the 1st of March, again we remain westerly, driving in more areas of low pressure, but it's not overly mild with that. In fact, it could be quite cold once again. So cold zonality rules really up to the start of March. And then the ECMWF again, we look like that, so more rain through central swathe of the country on Sunday. That gets out of the way and we have a bit of a storm through into Monday. It could bring severe gales to northern parts of the country. The low pressure moves in towards Norway. We turn wind into the northwest from Tuesday through to Wednesday. Bring colder air out of Greenland with risk of wintry showers too. Here comes that next area of low pressure on Thursday, a little bit further northwards this time compared to particularly where the GEM has it. So it's restricting any snow primarily with that to Scotland. Most other areas will be in a big warm sector and just have cold rain. Once that low pressure clears out away into southern North Sea, again the wind turns into the northwest, bringing cold air back from Greenland. And we've got some sort of secondary feature developing around here that's swinging in with this colder northwesterly wind, so that might deliver something wintry as we get through to the last day of February into the first day of March. That low pressure swings across the country. There's some sort of feature that's embedded within that, and that there may be a little bit of wintry potential in with that too. That's how we look as we get to day 10, which is certainly the 1st of March. Quite cold and unsettled, although the next low is waiting in the wings. There's a big warm sector with that one. So another day, and also we see the warm air or the mild air coming back in from off the Atlantic. This is the precipitation forecast based on that ECM run. So an active cold front pushing across, it's from meteo.com by the way. Active cold front pushing across the country today, bringing heavy rain. Some snow is possible with that on the back edge over high ground. Into tomorrow, it turns very wet in the northwest. Could be some snow over the Scottish mountains, and we keep that rain going then, piling into northwestern parts of the country through to the weekend. Always driest though in the east. Then we get through to Sunday, look very wet across southern parts of the country on Sunday morning. That rain clears through, we turn things drier. In comes that potential for severe gales on Monday. There could be quite a bit of snow with that across high ground of Scotland anyway. And then a cold front pushes southwards and eastwards. And that introduces that colder push of winds from the northwest. So as we go into the middle of next week, notice the showers turning increasingly wintry in northern and western parts of the country. Still primarily on the rain side of marginal down in the south and the southeast. But in the north and west, plenty of wintry showers continuing. Then in comes out low pressure from Wednesday through to Thursday. It does deliver a snow event for northern parts of the country. So Northern Ireland, Scotland, Northern England, possibly just down to North Wales. Heavy snow there on Thursday. Further south, it's heavy rain. If that low pressure was to trend further southwards, then of course the snow potential will come further south as well. So something to watch through the second half of next week. That all clears out of the way, and we're left with wintry showers piling into northern and western parts of the country. We end up looking like this. Lots of snow showers into northern and western areas as cold air is properly digging in from the north. And by day 10, we see a lot of those wintry showers, snow showers are dying away. It's turning drier, but it will be quite cold. That's quite a cold start to March. These are the options on the table within the ECM ensembles today for day 10, which is the 1st of March. So we have 21 members of the ECM ensembles, including the control and the operational run, that have low pressure in the North Atlantic, but also digging into northeastern parts of Europe, northern Europe. So there's a ridge in the middle of the Atlantic, and that places on the cold side of the jet stream. So a little bit of wintry potential as we get through to the end of February and the beginning of March there. 16 with a deep trough of low pressure just to our northeast and winds in from the northwest, and then 14 maybe a bit colder with these. Trough of low pressure is kind of elongating just to our east, and that could be pulling in some really quite cold air from the north. Of course, we haven't got a true mid-Atlantic ridge, so milder air would threaten from the west if we could go on any further, which in fact we can, because these are the options that we've got in 2 weeks' time. This one gets us to the 6th of March, have 18 members of the ECM ensemble then with low pressure to our north, a little bit flat, a little bit milder, winds in from the west. Another 18 with low pressure to the north, high pressure just to our south, again quite flat, relatively mild and westerly, and a little bit drier in the south. These 9 just here are colder though. They've got the trough over and just to our east. We're still on the cold side of the jet stream with those, so they're a little bit colder, with a bit of wintry potential there as we come towards the end of the first week of March. And then 6 has us under a large area of high pressure. All change with those. We're under high pressure, but there's only 6 of those doing that option. So it's a minority option. But overall, we may still be seeing indications there within the ECM ensembles of higher pressure through the early part of March. Have to wait and see. Let's see what Beijing Climate Centre has to say finally. So these 500 millibar heights broke down to 10-day periods. The first 10-day period will take us from the 21st of February through to the 1st of March. The coming 10 days has high pressure to our west-southwest, low pressure to our north-northeast. So yes, we line up the jet stream on the northwest-southeast trajectory. We pull the heights into the middle of the Atlantic a little bit, and we possibly go onto the cold side of the jet stream, unsettled and relatively cool there. You would have thought maybe even quite cold with the wind and the jet stream on a northwest-southeast trajectory, cold zonality. Big change in the next 10-day period. This is the 2nd to the 11th of March. High pressure then builds in from the southwest. Low pressure and the jet stream push northwards. Spring-like conditions take over there. We go much drier and settle things down. So the Beijing Climate Centre is along the lines of a lot of the long-range model output at the moment in seeing this change to something a lot drier for March. The next 10-day period is the 12th to the 21st of March. Again, high pressure over or just to our south, low pressure to the north. Jet stream is in that sort of position. Again, mainly dry and really quite mild. And then the final 10-day period is the 22nd to the 31st of March. Above average heights then still just to our west and over the UK. Low pressures up to the north, jet streams up there. A much more settled March coming up than we've had for many months actually. So they've had unsettled months really since September. You probably have to go back to last spring for the last sustained period of really settled weather through a monthly period, I would have thought. So the basic climate is seeing a big change for March with something much more anti-cyclonic, and it is along the lines of a lot of the long-range model output that we're seeing at the moment. But more on that tomorrow when we do GMA Friday. We'll see what the Japanese CFSV2 models have to say. But in the more immediate time, so that's the interest in the longer time frame. Do we build up the high pressure? Do we settle things down and get spring going into March? That's the long-term interest. The short-term interest for next week is with these southerly tracking low pressures and the jet stream shifting southwards. Will that allow something a little bit more wintry to occur? It could well do for northern parts of the country. For lowland southern England, it's still going to be very difficult to get snow down there, but possibly this next sort of week or so, particularly around the middle of next week through to like the 1st of March, certainly 1st of March, that sort of 5-day period or so could be the greatest chance of seeing some relatively interesting conditions in terms of sleet or snow. And I wouldn't totally rule out a chance down in the south, but it is most likely to happen up in the north. So quite a bit to keep an eye on over the next few days, and we'll be keeping you posted, of course, at Gaz Weathers. Now, as I say, start the video. If you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Try and get the subs up, so make sure you subscribe. Don't forget, there's PayPal and Patreon as well. If you'd like to give us a donation, let us know that you're enjoying the content, then you can do that through PayPal and Patreon. Links in the description at YouTube and on all the pages at gazweathers.com. You're helping us to pay for the website and keep the content online. So a big thank you to all patrons and donors for doing that. Right, tomorrow we've got GMA Friday coming up. That's month-end look with Japanese and CFSV2, and also have a week's 10-day video update as well. And we'll have a look and see how the wintry potential is looking through the second half of next week tomorrow. That's all for now, though, and thanks for watching.